Hello, this is Dr. Oscar Hernandez, board certified internist and pediatrician. Today we're going to talk about some of the important questions that patients ask me on a daily basis. So there's about 5 things that patients ask me over and over and over again. Some of these are discussed elsewhere, but we want to review the things that I have to deal with in the office every day with my patients. So we're going to start with the most important one, in my opinion, which is how soon are we going to have better or more rapid testing for coronavirus? Well, folks, the day has arrived. Guess what I've got? I've got a little box of something called Corona Check. Now, there's about 6 of these tests that are either on the market or about to come on the market under the FDA's Special Use Authorization program. I'll explain a little bit of what that means, but you can always go to the FDA website to get all the detailed information. This particular test, Corona Check, surprisingly, is made in China. All right, so at least that's what this label says. It's Shanghai International Holding Corporation, and they've got an office in Hamburg, Germany. And then there's also the Hangzhou Biotest Biotech Company. So who would have known? Our masks, our gowns, a lot of the equipment that we use to fight this epidemic is in fact originating from China. So I got this the other day, and I opened up the package insert, which I'm going to give you some of the highlights about. Who should get any coronavirus test? Whether it's a rapid test like this one, or whether it's a polymerase chain reaction, which is probably the top test to look at this sort of thing, or molecular testing that's coming down the line, and you hear things that are being put out by Abbott Laboratories and other companies. All right, who should get tested? Well, on March 24th of this year, of 2020, we had from the CDC statements that have to do with who should be tested, and there's priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, and non-priority patients. You can look this up yourself, but here's the big picture. Priority 1 is people who are in the hospital and sick. Those people need to be tested. Priority 2 includes first responders, medical personnel who have symptoms. Priority 3 has to do with people in communities with a lot of coronavirus. I'm in Miami, Florida. That would include us. So that's priority 3, with symptoms. The proviso to all this stuff is that whether you're in the hospital, you're a first responder, or you're in the community, you have to have symptoms. And what are the symptoms again? I think we've all heard them 20 million times. The sine qua non symptoms, the ones that really make us run for the hills, are fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Now, you may have been reading that you can have gastrointestinal symptoms, some diarrhea, some vomiting, that you might have anosmia, which means that you can't smell well. The professional organization that works with ear, nose, and throat physicians put out a statement about that, and so on. Those are not major symptoms, and in my office, they probably won't qualify you. Another important thing is, have you had close contact with a person who has coronavirus? For me, that would be a very important factor, and if you've had close contact, and we need to remember what the definition of close contact is, then I would be more flexible in testing that type of person. The reason I say that from the get-go on this video is that in the state of Florida, almost 90% of the tests that are done looking for coronavirus are negative. The patient doesn't have coronavirus according to the test that was used. Well, this is alarming because that means that we're wasting 90% of our tests. Our level of concern and hysteria, if it might be, is that we're misusing so many of these tests, and there's not a lot of them to go around. So please, folks, don't dupe your physician or the emergency room. Don't go around saying that you have these symptoms if you don't. Now, in order to alleviate some of that testing stuff, the FDA issued something called Special Use Authorization, specifically as it relates to these types of kits that are pretty much almost instantaneous kits. Anybody can pretty much do them. They're really meant for professionals, but I get the feeling that as this thing develops and we get more and more of these kits, you might even be able to get up an at-home test kit, much as you would do a pregnancy test. We're not there at this time, don't misunderstand me, but the point is that these are going to become more useful. Under FDA criteria, a special use authorization test is not a rigorously tested test. The bar for use for these tests is lower than what qualifies for a polymerase chain reaction test or a molecular test. these are what we call antibody tests at this time, the type of kit that I have. Special use authorizations are not FDA approval. What they are is special use authorization. That means that because of the epidemic, the FDA has said, okay, let's use this test. But as soon as the FDA says, we're gone, you no longer have authorization to use these tests, the epidemic has gone away, then they lose their authorization. This particular test, when you look at the package insert, the information that is provided for physicians says that it is more than 90% sensitive. Now, these are laboratory conditions, and in a lab, everything is better. But let's be more accurate. Specifically, the product insert for this test says that it is sensitive 100% of the time. I want to explain what that means. And that it is specific 99.5% of the time. If this is true, and this is reproducible, these are amazing numbers. To be sensitive means that a test will diagnose the illness correctly in people who have it. That is called sensitivity. Specificity is when a test is negative and the patient really doesn't have the disease or whatever condition we are looking for. So 100% sensitivity and 99.5% specificity, that's a home run. That's very few tests have that kind of number. How does this particular test work? Well, it's not that difficult. And I'm not going to show you on the test that comes out of the box for this particular video because I only have 25 of these. I'm not going to waste them on a video. And I cannot reuse them. Once one has been used, we have to put in a biohazard container and it's gone forever. But here's the skinny. And you can look this up. They have some videos. This company has some videos on the web on how to do that. You take a little prick thing. You prick your finger like diabetics might do when they test their sugars at home. They have a little lancet, it's called, and a little tiny drop of blood comes out. Then there's a very fine little crystal tube. It's called a capillary tube. And you dab it on the blood. As soon as you do that, you open up your packet. You open up this packet, and inside there's a very small little tray, and it's got a hole in it. You put the capillary tube in the hole, it sucks up the blood. You put 2 drops of a reagent into a specific well. You start your timer, you wait 10 minutes, and then you look at the result. The result is very simple. You either have IgG, IgM, or nothing shows up. IgG is an antibody that is produced in the body weeks after you've had an infection. It basically means in most diseases that you have immunity against that particular infection. IgM is an antibody that your body produces, and we see this antibody in patients who have recently started to have an infection. As soon as you begin to start to have symptoms, that means that you've had the disease probably somewhere between 5 and 14 days. Almost certainly you have antibodies going. If your body has not produced antibodies, this test is not going to be that useful. It's going to be negative. But most people, unless they're immunocompromised, will be developing antibodies, and the test will pick it up. What does that mean? Well, if you have IgG antibody, you might be immune to this virus for a long time. How long? We don't know. Is it years? Is it months? We're not sure yet. My suspicion is that it's going to be for years. But this is my suspicion. That's not hard scientific fact. That remains to be proven. What are the things that would otherwise keep a test like this being inaccurate? Well, every manufacturer will have their criteria. But one of the things that we know about these tests is that there are certain drugs that can interfere with the result of the test. So, fortunately, the manufacturer tells us what medicines we can use and won't interfere with the test. And that's an important list. Acetaminophen, Tylenol, salicylic acid, aspirin. You can use those. You're not going to have problems with this test. Caffeine. You can drink a cup of coffee. The test is still good, according to this manufacturer. Alcohol, 1%. You can have a beer. You can have a drink. You might go to your doctor and do this test, and it's still not going to be a problem. Oxalic acid. I don't know many people who use that. Gentisic acid. I don't know what that is either. Ascorbic acid. Hey, that's vitamin C. So if you're using some vitamin C product at home because you heard that protects you against coronavirus, this test is still good. By the way, I know of no evidence that shows that it protects you against coronavirus. All right, so those are some of the things about these rapid tests. I've talked specifically about this test and this manufacturer. There are others that are coming around or are around. This is the one I was able to get my hands on. This whole deal, the finger pricking, the testing, the waiting, the reagent, takes 15 minutes, and you have the result. Will I do this on every Tom, Dick, and Harry who shows up? No. I'm going to do it according to CDC criteria. We've already said what some of those are. So, question number 1 has taken up most of our video time today, is what to do with a rapid reagent test, when it's good, when it's not good, what is the special use authorization. The king of the hill when it comes to these tests is the polymerase chain reaction test. It's the nasal swab that many of us have heard about over and over and over again, but that is not as easily available. As we close, I want to mention 3 things. We're next to a fireplace. It's not by accident. During World War II, President Roosevelt used to have what they called the fireside chats. Back in that day, there was no TV or internet or something, and people would congregate around their radio, and the family would listen to what FDR had to say about how the war was going on. You've heard it said many times, I'm sure, that this is like a war. It's certainly taking a lot of people. It is like a war, all right? So remember, we are at war. That means that we're not just supposed to hide and flee from the enemy, but that means that we have to be careful. We need to follow recommendations. A lot of people are not following recommendations. Why do I not have a mask on? I'm in my home. By the way, we're going to do a short video very soon that keeps dwelling on these commonly asked questions that patients tell me. And we're going to talk about how do we sterilize an N95 mask? When should we sterilize an N95 mask? What are the written criteria for how to sterilize an N95 mask? We need to talk about all those things because there's a lot of stuff on the web that is misinformation, hearsay, people's opinion. Might be good, might be bad. I specifically talk about things that we know we have data about. Hey, if you liked our video, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't, give us a thumbs down. But you know what I really appreciate? Comments. So if there are things that you want to talk about, tell me what you want to talk about, and we're going to try to touch on those topics. The reason that I pick the things I pick is because it's what I see in the bunker, right? The bunker is the office. That's where we deal with patients. That's where we deal hand-to-hand with this illness. Stay safe. We're going to come back with another video real soon, so we'll see you then.